Good afternoon. I wanted to share with you an audio of the slides that I posted in course content to help you develop the presentation that you have due for week 6. So this is a slide presentation on how to do slide presentations. Anything in red is a note to you to help you with preparing your slides. A study finds that 96% of executives experience some anxiety about public speaking, and fear of public speaking can interfere with advancement. So this is the reason why I hope most of you will decide to do an audio as opposed to doing the detailed speaker notes. Of course, the detailed speaker notes are acceptable as long as they are detailed. You'll see that there is a note to you here. The note is that I have a citation at the bottom, and the reason the citation is at the bottom is that I got this quote from this source. So it is the only thing on this slide, so I can put the citation at the bottom. I can also use a smaller font size for the citation. You need to start with an agenda. What I'm going to be covering in this presentation is planning and preparing, creating content, using visual aids, avoiding mistakes, and how to end the presentation. I want you to notice something called first word consistency. Planning, creating, using, avoiding, ending. My first words all begin with a gerund or an ing word. It does not mean that every slide has to begin with an ing word, but once I use a type of word as my first word on the slide, all the first words should use the same type of word, whether it be a noun, a verb, an ing word, a question word. It has to have first word consistency. Use a light background. I know many of the Microsoft templates are a dark background, but it's relatively easy to just change it to a light background. Dark backgrounds work best in a room that is completely dark. I am not going to be looking at your slides in a dark room, so it is much better to use a light background. Slides are in bullets. You do not need the words the, a, and, that. You need phrases. You do not need sentences. So you do not need words like the small words like that I just shared. Effective presentations are personal, revealing, memorable, and you have to sell the benefits of whatever it is you're talking about. Even for those of you who are not in sales, you are basically selling every single day at work. You have to sell your ideas, you have to sell your approach, and quite frankly, sell yourself as well. This is an infographic that I've used here as a transition slide. You do have an infographic that you did in week 5 that you can use in your week 6 presentation. Use a combination of text and illustrations on your slides. Since this is a transition slide, I did not necessarily need text on it. Using all text can be boring. Using all pictures makes it harder to follow the presentation. So use a balance. You'll see that my slides are balanced. So you either need an intro or an agenda. You do not need both. An agenda is a list of what is going to be covered. An intro can be a quote related to content, like the quote that I used from Jack Welch at the beginning. It can be a question to the audience. Have you ever considered? Have you ever seen yourself? Have you ever experienced? It can be a fact about the topic. Make it an interesting fact. And it can be a brief video related to the topic. And I do mean brief, since it should not be any more than about a minute and a half. This is a brief presentation, so you do not want a long video. Open your presentation with impact. Be memorable at the beginning. Let people know what this is going to be about. You want to not say, I would like to introduce, I'm going to talk about, I'd like to welcome you to. This is not the best way to present a presentation. Start with something impactful about the content, not about you. Openers should be short. They should be personal. You want to tell just a little bit about yourself, and I do mean a little, maybe 10 seconds. you want to use imagery, get people to imagine what you're talking about. Make sure whatever you're talking about is relevant to the audience and not just to you. And many times a presentation has a theme, so share the theme in your opener. Your framework. You want to establish one purpose for the audience, not for you, for the audience. You determine your intention for this presentation. Are you trying to educate people or get them to think? Are you trying to persuade them or get them to take action? Consider how you can engage your audience. Examples work, storytelling work, and I'm going to get into a little bit more of that later. And define what success is going to be or your desired results from the end of this presentation. In this presentation, you're going to be making recommendations. So the desired action is that they follow your recommendations. This is again of things that you don't want to say in a presentation. I'm nervous. I made a mistake. I'm sorry. I'm not an expert in whatever you're talking about. If you make a mistake, keep going. Do not apologize. The only person who knows you made a mistake is you until you apologize or tell us you made a mistake. This is a transition slide, so all I have on it is a graphic. The introduction. You wanted to arouse interest. I also talked about using quotes, sharing facts, or asking questions. The illustration here is that using quotes, share facts, and ask questions are part of arouse interest. So there is a sub-bullet. Sub-bullets are indented. They do not have to be used, but if you are going to use it, make sure you use at least 2 sub-bullets. As you prepare, you want to think about how you're going to connect ideas, how you're going to use your visuals effectively, how you're going to keep people interested in what you're talking about. A good idea is to limit the number of key points on a slide. You should have 1 point per slide. And make sure you address any of the content requirements. Rule of 6, this is important. The rule of 6 is that you have 6 words per line and 6 lines per slide. Notice that none of my bullet points have more than 3 words, but I do have a total of 6 bullets. This is not 6 by 6. It is not 36 words per slide. It is using the rule of 6, which is a maximum of 6 words and a maximum of 6 lines. Now, if I was doing a presentation on Snow White and the 7 Dwarfs, I would list all 7 on one slide. There's 7 of them. There's 1 word. You want to relate to what the audience needs to know about. You want to use clear, vivid language. If you're talking about something that people don't understand, tie it to what you think they might understand. In this particular presentation, since you're not doing it to the class, but just to me, you could try a technique of getting the audience involved. What I wanted you to see here is that I have a citation next to 1 line. It means that's the only line that I use that source for. It's not what you tell them, it's what they hear. For anybody who knows, Red Auerbach was a general manager of the Boston Celtics. Note, use a dark font for text. You're using a light background, so you use a dark font. Use color effectively. Notice here I've used a dark brown for the main thing and a lighter brown for something else. You do not need periods after bullets. Remember, they are not sentences. Here's that rule of 6 again. 6 words per line, 6 lines per slide, and 1 idea per slide. Remember, slides are not a paper in PowerPoint. You prepare it as a presentation. You write in brief bullets without periods. There are no sentences or paragraphs unless you're using a quote or you're sharing those organization's vision and mission statement, which is not actually required in this presentation. Keep your presentation simple. Use your bullets for main points. Make sure they're readable. Avoid unnecessary clip art and animation. Animation adds to the download time. Plus, I don't even look at your slides in the format where I would see animation, so don't do it. Use a sans serif font. There's no font called sans serif. This is Comic Sans, Arial, Tahoma, Verdana are all good slide fonts. Times New Roman is great for papers and bad for slides. So let's take a look here. This is all 24-point font. The difference between Comic Sans and Times New Roman or serif and sans serif is that look on the right-hand side and you will see that all of the serif fonts have a narrower depth to the words, and they use squiggly lines. Comic Sans are cleaner, straighter, and stronger fonts. You don't want to use italics. Even Lucinda calligraphy, is not in a italics font. You do not use italics except for a quote. Don't use bold except for a heading, or unless you have something that you really want to point out. Many Microsoft Office templates use Times New Roman as the default. I have no idea why they shouldn't, but change it to a sans serif font. Excuse me, that's an allergy cough, not a corona cough. And change it to a sans serif font. Some other key things. You only capitalize the first word in your bullet point. You do not capitalize every word. You can use photos, logos, charts, clip arts for your graphics. Whatever you can find is good. Find an interesting template or create a template for the company that you're using and use their colors. Avoid one sub-bullet. Keep your slides simple and easy to read, and do not use all caps. In headings, it's okay, but in content, it is not. Don't go below 20-point font on text. I believe this particular slide is 24-point. If you go to 20-point and then you do sub-bullet, it's going to go to 16 or 18-point. You do not want to go below 20. It is, however, okay if you're creating your own graphics, but make sure whatever you've written is readable. This is a very interesting concept. I think you could all read this, even though every word basically is spelled wrong. According to research at Cambridge University, it doesn't matter in what order the letters in a word are. The only important thing is that the first and last letters be in the right place. The rest can be a total mess, and you can still read it without a problem. This is because the human mind does not read every letter by itself, but reads the word as a whole, and here's the interesting point. It doesn't happen if you write in all caps, which is one of the reasons you do not write in all caps on slides. Focus on ideas, not the slides. Clip art, be very careful with clip art. Most of it is junk. It is actually the file that says clip art. Use appropriately, it's okay on transitions, but don't use it on content, don't overuse it. Use it only if it enhances the point. And again, be very careful with clip art. There's two different ways that you can get information across. One is push, hitting people's hot buttons, persuading them or encouraging them, or pull, describing possibilities, inspiring action. Either one can work effectively in a presentation. Storytelling, I said I'd come back to it. Storytelling, use a visual framework. Share empathy, compassion, persuasive. And the reason for storytelling is people remember more what you tell them in a story than what you tell them in other formats. And it's also more engaging for whoever is listening to your presentation. You can use anecdotes also to illustrate key points. It also is a great way of avoiding that you sounding arrogant. Let me share with you something that happened. It helps people to understand, make sure it's specific and relevant to what you're talking about. People are going to retell anecdotes, retell stories. They don't retell slide bullet points. Use a problem, situation, results framework for anecdotes. Here was the problem, here's what we did, here's what happened. And that can also work well for stories. Fears. This is in reverse order. Number 12, ghosts, clowns, darkness, zombies, strangers, flying, claustrophobia, blood and needles, drowning, bugs, snakes, heights and death. And number 1 is public speaking. Telling jokes is not a good idea, but I'm going to tell a Jerry Seinfeld one because I think it applies here. Jerry Seinfeld said that these results told him that if you were at a funeral, it tells you you would rather be the person in the coffin than doing the eulogy. Personally, I'll do the eulogy. and I've done many. Here's a list of people who have stage fright, which is a really fascinating point. So if you have stage fright, you're in good company. Look at the names on this list. Many of them known for performing or speaking, but they had stage fright. So you have to overcome it. The more you do it, the more you'll overcome it, which is one of the reasons that I suggest that if you can, do this as an audio as opposed to doing it as with the note pages. How do you overcome anxiety? You practice, you practice, you practice. You don't tell jokes, but you can use humor as long as it doesn't go to somebody else, but it's self-effacing. Write out your presentation in bullets. Do not write out a script. If you write out a script, you are going to read it, which is not what I want you to be doing. Visualize success, and one of the most important things is breathing, which is not as bad when you're not looking at people, but if you're standing in front of the room, it's important. I started my career as an elementary school librarian, and I find lots of great lessons are in children's books. The little engine that could said, I think I can, I think I can, I think I can, I know I can. Chicken Little kept running around saying the sky is falling. So what I'm saying to you is be the little engine that could, not Chicken Little. Power poses are a good thing to do before you have to do a presentation. There's basically two presentations. One is called the Alpha and the other is called the Winner. The Alpha looks like a Wonder Woman pose, and the Winner looks like a score or a touchdown kind of pose. You can practice those poses before you're going to speak. Love this quote from Henry Ford: whether you think that you can or that you can't, you're usually right. So if you think you can do a presentation, you can. If you think you can't, you won't do it well. I just love this stupid sign. Be prepared for the unexpected. Best practices. These are your required slides, your title, name of the presentation and your name, the intro or agenda. You don't need both. Then come all your content slides, the summary, which does not repeat the agenda. It could be another quote, it could be a different fact, but it should not repeat the list of the agenda. You then have a slide for the audience questions. You're not asking the audience a question. You are saying, are there any questions? It's just a much better ending than saying something like, that's it, I'm done. And your reference slide, which needs to be in APA format. Food for thought. The deepest sin is believing without evidence, which is why you have to do research. And the biggest problem in communication is the illusion that it's taken place, which is why you have to carefully prepare a presentation. Include required slides. Follow the slide guidelines. Avoid sentences and paragraphs. Use the rule of 6. Follow first word consistency. Only capitalize the first word. Do not write in all caps. Use graphs, charts, photos, but not clip art. Provide enough information on your slides to help you present. Your actual bullets should be what remind you of what you want to say and allow your audience to follow along. Reminders. Summarize key points. State any actions as verbs. End on a positive note and ask for questions. Here's one way to summarize. Remember your P's and C's. Presentations are not so difficult if you plan, prepare, practice, and perform. If you're clear, compelling, captivating, and confident. Confidence is critical. All right, so for your presentation, your content, address all the requirements with depth. Analyze over report. I've said that so many times in feedback. Analyze, say what it means, what are the implications, not just tell me what happened. Share any insights that you've developed. Make recommendations and use appropriate sources. Your presentation, you can do it as a detailed voiceover. Use Skype, Zoom, MP4, or Screen-O-Matic. I'm going to show you in a minute how to do voiceover. Follow the slide guidelines, include the required slides. Do not read, do not read. Here's your content that you need for the presentation. You want one brief slide, which is an overview of the company, and at least one slide for each content requirement, which were culture and management influence, demographic forces, impact of technology, social responsibility and ethics, and innovation. And you are still using your selected company. A presentation is not a paper in PowerPoint. So just as a review, include only required slides, which is on slide 44, include formatting slides, which is 37, and best practices, which is slide 39. All right, so if you are in the create mode of PowerPoint, this is what your slides look like. You can see at the top, I've highlighted the third bullet from the left. It says insert. And then if I go all the way over to the right, there's a button that says insert audio. That's how you add audio directly onto your slides. I'm using Zoom for this presentation, but you can use other sources. If you are adding the discussion or your speech to the slide, you want to do one on each slide. You're not doing one for the whole presentation, otherwise I can't follow along with your slides. That's what I just said, record voice on each slide. You can use MP4, Screen-O-Matic, record on Zoom or Skype. If you do, you transfer it to YouTube. When you transfer it to YouTube, make sure that you make it public or I can't look at it. Make sure your voice is heard. If you're using speaker notes rather than any of the voice systems, make sure your notes are detailed. I mentioned this already, avoid animation, fly-in, transitions. It takes too much time to download, and I'm going to be looking at your slides in the format that I don't see that anyway. Use high quality, not clip art illustrations. Check your audio before submitting. Make sure I can hear it. Do not write in sentences or paragraphs. Download time should be no more than 5 minutes. If you don't put in a lot of animation or any animation or fly-ins, it will not increase your time. Make sure you have a good balance of words and graphics. PowerPoint is your guide. It's your reminder. Your slide bullets should help you to remember what you want to say. It's not a crutch. You're not reading the slides. This is really important. You are presenting. You're not reading slides. You're not reading notes. You're not reading a script. If you are at all watching the president in his daily briefings, you can see how ineffective he is when he's reading. He doesn't look at the audience. He doesn't engage. He just reads. And it happens with everyone. And believe it or not, even if I'm not looking at you, I can usually tell from your voice if you're reading a script. Another quote, whenever I see a young person do a good presentation, I never forget them. The opposite is also true. Quote from Jack Welch, who passed away recently and was often considered one of the better CEOs of the second half of the 20th century. And once again, you can see my citation at the bottom. All right, now this is a question that I'm going to ask you. If there's anything you still need to know about presentations, please post it in course questions or send me a personal email through the message area. Your summary is a wrap-up. It's not the same as the agenda. It could be a new quote. It could be a question of the audience like I just did as a wrap-up. And I've done all different wrap-ups here to show you the different ones. This is a wonderful short video. I'm not going to show it to you, but this is a hyperlink. You can go and watch this video on PowerPoint. Nothing is impossible. The word itself says, I'm possible. And here's my question slide. I'm saying any questions. It can be a question mark. It's a good time to use animation, but always end with a question. And then I have my reference slide, which is in APA format. I hope this has been helpful to you. Again, if there's something you don't understand, please ask. Thanks for listening.